Well, I think this is typical Donald Trump. In other words, this is the way he behaves with respect to pretty much everybody. He wants to be the center of attention. He thinks he should be the center of attention. I'm sure there were a lot of other foreign leaders trying to do the same, so everybody gets a little credit. Most credit goes to India and Pakistan for doing it themselves. But the fact that Trump didn't wait for statements from New Delhi or Rawalpindi shouldn't be surprising. He wanted to shape the story, and that's what he did. So, you know, as they say in The Godfather, nothing personal, but typical Trump. In fact, the United States has a great deal of sympathy for India's position. We have been attacked in the United States by terrorists based in foreign countries, obviously 9/11 being the worst example of that. And we took what we consider to be legitimate actions in self-defense, retaliating against those attacks, and in fact driving al-Qaeda out of Afghanistan and bringing down the Taliban regime there back in 2001.
And with Donald Trump making the headlines across the world, including here in India, I'm joined by a very special guest. John Bolton was former National Security Advisor to Donald Trump between 2018 and 19. Appreciate your joining us here, Mr. Bolton. Donald Trump making the headlines in India for the manner in which he's virtually arrogated to himself credit for the ceasefire between India and Pakistan. How should we in India understand Donald Trump, particularly in the context of the subcontinent?
Well, I think this is typical Donald Trump. In other words, this is the way he behaves with respect to pretty much everybody. He wants to be the center of attention. He thinks he should be the center of attention. As far as I can tell, being an outside observer, I think Trump and J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio were making calls and hope to bring about a peaceful resolution of the dispute between India and Pakistan. So I'm sure there were a lot of other foreign leaders trying to do the same. So everybody gets a little credit. Most credit goes to India and Pakistan for doing it themselves. But the fact that Trump didn't wait for statements from New Delhi or Rawalpindi shouldn't be surprising. He wanted to shape the story, and that's what he did. So, you know, as they say in The Godfather, nothing personal, but typical Trump.
You're saying it's typical Trump, but what's interesting, Mr. Bolton, you were NSA when Balakot happened and India had their airstrikes on Pakistan. At that time, Donald Trump was away from the action. He was still president, but away from the action, didn't try and suggest that he was the one bringing the two countries together. Now in 2025, he's trying to take credit. What's the difference, you think, between 2019 and 2025?
Well, I remember that night in 2019 very well. In fact, we were in Hanoi getting ready for President Trump's meeting with Kim Jong-un, the second meeting with North Korea's leader between the two of them, when I was informed in a call by then Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, really Chairman of the Joint Chiefs Joe Dunford, that things were heating up between India and Pakistan. Mike Pompeo and I were both in Hanoi in preparation for the meeting with Kim Jong-un the next day, and we were on the phone with a number of people, including Ajit Doval, Prime Minister Modi's national security advisor, and officials in Pakistan, as were our colleagues back in Washington at the Defense Department. And that situation calmed down fairly quickly. I think it's safe to say we were up late in the night in Hanoi, and we didn't wake President Trump up. We told him about it the next morning. So that could explain the difference between 2019 and 2025.
Was there, therefore, in 2025, you believe, the real fear of an escalating conflict, including the fear that two nuclear neighbors were raising the stakes? Was that the reason you believe that Donald Trump and his team this time were far more proactive?
Well, it's conceivable. I mean, the exchange of military action did go further than in 2019. Whether it was really about to go to a much higher level remains unclear. I do think that the government of Pakistan indicated that the breakthrough came when their top military official called his Indian counterpart and said, let's arrange a ceasefire here." So it really took place not through international diplomatic efforts so much as a direct contact between the two militaries.
That's an important point you're making, but I want to raise how do you see from your vantage position what happened between India and Pakistan? Is there a recognition in Washington and in the United States of India's concerns over cross-border terrorism, and India being the victim of it and Pakistan the perpetrator? Or does Washington still like to hyphenate the two countries?
No, I don't think we're back in the era of hyphenated relations. I do think that, in fact, the United States has a great deal of sympathy for India's position. We have been attacked in the United States by terrorists based in foreign countries, obviously 9/11 being the worst example of that. And we took what we considered to be legitimate actions in self-defense, retaliating against those attacks, and in fact driving Al-Qaeda out of Afghanistan and bringing down the Taliban regime there back in 2001. And I know India has faced a long history of terrorist attacks emanating from terrorist bases in Pakistani territory, and not just in Kashmir, but obviously the attack on the Indian parliament and in other important Indian cities. So there was never any doubt in my mind, whether in 2019 or more recently, that India had a right of self-defense. And I think that view is widely shared in Washington. I don't think anybody really disputes it. The question is, at this point, what discussions between India and Pakistan might result in the government of Pakistan taking more control over its own territory. The Pakistani claim is obviously their government had no involvement, but the fact is when terrorist attacks are emanating from another sovereign's territory, it's that sovereign's responsibility to stop them. And the failure to do so can lead to what we just saw happen. I would say there's one other factor here that I think is important in Washington and really should be, I'm sure is important in India too, and that is what we've seen in the press and heard in quiet discussion channels about the effect of the Chinese weapons supplied to the Pakistani military, especially its fighter planes, which appear to be some kind of fifth generation fighter comparable to the US F-35. This is something that is of grave concern because of the increasing Chinese influence in Pakistan generally. Press reports indicate that perhaps as much as 80% of Pakistan's sophisticated weaponry is now being supplied by China, which is a substantial change from decades ago when most of it was supplied by the United States. So this overall increase in Chinese influence is very concerning.
Your answer has several important elements. I want to break them down and get short answers to them. Number one, am I right, Mr. Bolton, in your saying that India has the right to self-defense and that is recognized by the United States? That if India chooses to strike at terror bases in Pakistan, India will get support, you believe, from large sections of Washington. Am I right?
Yes, I think that's well within anybody's definition of the right to self-defense.
Right. The second point that you made is how do you then get Pakistan to dismantle its terror infrastructure? Now, till 2022, Pakistan was on the Financial Action Task Force grey list, was being monitored very closely, then was taken off the list. Do you believe it's time to put Pakistan on that list? Do you believe it's time to put some tough conditions on what Pakistan will do to dismantle this terror infrastructure? And should the global community come together on that?
Well, I think the inclusion on that list is really handled by technical experts, and personally, I'd prefer to keep it that way. I think it gives the list more credibility. So whether Pakistan should be added back, I would leave to them. Uh, I do think, as I say, every country should be in control of the sovereign territory it claims, and I don't see why Pakistan should be an exception. I think the United States should have conversations with them about it, but we also understand. Tell me if opinion has changed in India, but under the Simla Accords, it has been since that time the very strong Indian view that they don't need any outside interference, that this has got to be one-on-one with Pakistan. And I can understand that. I would say the U.S. would be happy to do something if somebody
Mhm.
wanted us to do it.
No, I'm making a distinction between India's position on Kashmir, which we believe is bilateral, and getting Pakistan to act on terror. Do you believe the US needs to put more pressure now on Pakistan and show verifiable, Pakistan must show verifiable evidence that it is acting against the terror groups based in Pakistan?
Well, I think the United States should engage with Pakistan more broadly. I think terror should be at the top of the list, but I think Chinese influence needs to be right behind it. Look, we've had complex relationships with Pakistan for a long time, and particularly since the experience with the Taliban in Afghanistan. My view has been right from the first, really going back to the Reagan administration, that the Pakistani support for terrorism, whether against the Soviets during their occupation in Afghanistan or against India or anybody else, is playing with fire for Pakistan. This is not in their interest. It's going to come back to bite them, whether it's because of military retaliation by another country or from the danger that the government of Pakistan itself could be overtaken by terrorists.
You mentioned China now more than once, and that's the other big question. How should the world look at this Pakistan-China nexus that is building up? The fear is that China is the one which is propping up and goading Pakistan, arming it militarily. What should be done? The US and China could be in trade talks soon. Do you believe that China is a threat to stability in this part of the world?
I don't think there's any question about it. In fact, I think the danger globally is the building China-Russia axis, like the Sino-Soviet alliance of the Cold War, except this time China's in charge. And I think it's a threat because of Chinese hegemonic aspirations all along its Indo-Pacific periphery. Certainly, I think it's a threat to the U.S. and its interest in the region. It's particularly a threat to India, which has, as you well know, a long and contested land border with China, and with Pakistan, an opportunity to China to outflank India on the west. So I think we should be looking at a variety of things. I think keeping the Asian Security Quad, Japan, India, Australia, and the U.S. very active is a good place to start. I think there are a number of other things we should be doing bilaterally. And I've said many times before this attack that I think the U.S.-Indian bilateral relationship is, from our perspective, the most important one for the rest of this century. So we need there's a lot of work to do here.
You're saying the Indo-US relationship is one of the most important. I just want to rewind to where we started off with Donald Trump. In Donald Trump 2.0, are we seeing Donald Trump now wanting to play a more active role in settling conflicts across the world? He's speaking to the Russian president, the Ukrainian president. Do you get us? He's just made a major trip to the Middle East. Is Donald Trump 2.0 different in any way in terms of trying to settle these conflicts compared to what he was in his first term?
Well, I think he wants a Nobel Peace Prize, whether for solving the Ukraine war, solving the war in the Middle East, solving tensions between India and Pakistan. I mean, whatever it takes. So be careful what you want if he decides to get involved in it. I think it is more an example of Donald Trump doesn't follow an overall national security strategy. It's what attracts his attention at any given time, and I think you can expect that very transactional approach to foreign affairs that he's just demonstrated during the Middle East trip to apply in the case of the bilateral India-U.S. relationship as well. I wish it were more on broader strategic concepts. But I think that's unlikely for the remainder of Trump's term.
You know, you said that whether then it's Russia, Ukraine, whether it's the Middle East, or whether it's India, Pakistan, Donald Trump wants to be the center of attention and also wants the Nobel Peace Prize. Do you believe, though, that his transactional approach can actually work?
Well, I think it's doubtful because I don't think his attention span is long enough. These are complex problems. I don't need to tell you that when it comes to India, Pakistan. People would say the same about the Middle East and Ukraine, Russia. You can't kind of jump in and jump out and expect to have a sustained path to resolving what for many centuries in some cases have been intractable problems.
So therefore, in conclusion, if you had one piece of advice, Mr. Bolton, to the Indian leadership in dealing with Trump 2.0, what would that advice be, given what has happened over the last week?
Well, I would say stay patient because the level of energy and activity is going to vary widely. I've said many times, I think the foreign leader who did best with Trump in the first term was Shinzo Abe of Japan because he stayed in constant contact with Trump. That doesn't mean he asked for something in every conversation, but when he did ask for something because he had been in constant contact and visits and on the phone, Trump took it more seriously. Prime Minister Modi clearly has a very good relationship with Trump, but as the relationship gets closer, I would just advise that he and his advisors take a look at the Shinzo Abe pattern.
Okay, so what you're saying, stay in touch with Donald, stay engaged with Donald Trump, but also don't allow Donald Trump to take you off your own course. So be clear with your agenda. Don't allow Donald Trump to disrupt your agenda, but stay engaged with him. That's the message in a way.
Right, and hope that India and the U.S. can find common ground to make progress together. That would be my priority.
Okay. John Bolton, for speaking so plainly and honestly with us, I really appreciate you joining me. Thank you so much.